We've visited every Universal theme park in the world. Well, except for that one that recently opened in Orlando, but that doesn't count because we're Australian and every Universal park is really far away, so cut us some slack. But for years, we've held the belief that Universal Studios Japan is one of Universal's very best parks. A place famous for blockbuster rides you can't find anywhere else, massive seasonal events, and themed lands that pull you straight into worlds like Harry Potter and Mario. It's also one of the busiest theme parks on the planet. In fact, only 2 parks get more visitors each year, and both of those are in the US. On this trip, we came ready to see if USJ could still live up to that reputation. But we ran into something that completely changed the way we would experience this theme park. Universal Studios Japan opened in 2001 in Osaka as the company's first park outside the United States. It's grown massively over the past 2 decades, adding huge themed areas like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in 2014 and the first ever Super Nintendo World in 2021. Despite its relatively young age by theme park standards, Universal Studios Japan has quickly carved a name for itself. Now, Universal Studios Japan is famous for combining Universal's blockbuster attractions with historical classics, while also forging a bit of its own path. This is the only park in the world where you can ride Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey alongside the famous Jaws ride, which closed in Florida back in 2012. Speaking of Florida, if you've been to Florida's Universal Studios Park, then a lot of this park is going to look extremely familiar. And despite some areas being an almost one-to-one recreation, the park has also managed to add some unique attractions not found anywhere else in Universal's lineup, such as Hollywood Dream the Ride, a B&M Hypercoaster, Space Fantasy the Ride, and the Flying Dinosaur Flying Coaster. Come to think of it, this park might have the most thrill rides out of any Universal Studios theme park. Universal Studios Japan is the centerpiece of a large resort area in Osaka, with official hotels, a shopping and dining district called City Walk, and a train station that gives you easy access from the city center. For our trip, we had just 1 day in the park, which meant everything had to be efficient. We don't usually do this for reasons that will become clear later, but we thought, considering that we'd visited this park a combined 8 times beforehand, that we'd seen most of what it has to offer, and really just wanted to stop by for an update and to ride anything we might have missed, such as Super Nintendo World. The plan? Get in early, secure our Super Nintendo World entry, and hit the must-do rides before the crowds got the better of us. Something we didn't factor in, though, was acts of God. Staying off-site, we took the train from downtown Osaka to the park, which got us in nice and early. Like most of the popular theme parks in Japan, you want to get here at least an hour before the park opens. They never officially announce it, but most days the park will open early, but just keep in mind they never stay open late, and some rides will close before the park does. So being there early is your best time to get a leg up on the other park goers. We arrived an hour before the official opening time to find the gates already open. And talking to people in the park, we found out they opened 90 minutes before the advertised time, so it pays to arrive extra early. As soon as we stepped inside the gates, the rain started, and it didn't let up for the rest of the day. But with only 1 day to experience the over 30 different rides and shows that the park had to offer to make this very video, we squelched our way into the park and towards the back. Wait, this just in. We're heading over to my intercity correspondent Dominic for a special message.
Hi, I'm Dom, the other host of Review Time. I'm very far away. Now, I'm not. You might think I'm magic, which I am, but by law I have to denounce my arcane past. No, this is actually the Hover Air X1 Pro Max, probably the most exciting sponsor we've had to date. We like tech here at Review Time, but we need devices fit for travel. We've had drones before, but they're just inconvenient. You need the bulky drone, the controllers, all the wires. It's a lot. With this, you don't need any of that. Just the drone. You push this button, and with a click You have incredible 8K cinematic shots. It is your personal cinematographer, and I mean personal because this thing legitimately follows you around. This is me walking on dirt towards the sun. This is me walking towards water, which is the opposite of the sun. Now I'm going away. This is the top of my head, something you never thought you'd see, but now you're cursed with knowing what the top of my head looks like. All of these require just one button, and hell, they have a controller if you do want to go full manual, but having all of these shots just a single click away is a game changer for travel. If there is one drone that you should consider for travel, make it this one, because honestly, it is a game changer. Huge shout out to 00 Robotics for sponsoring this video, and be sure to check out the Hover Air X1 Pro Max. It is insanely cool. Now back to Luke.
The main new draw since our most recent visit was Super Nintendo World, the original version of this land and the only one we have now experienced. However, to experience the area here, you need a time ticket. So as soon as we entered the park, we jumped into the park's app and booked our time slot, which happened to be right away. Unfortunately, this also happened to be the part of the day where the rain was at its heaviest. But with a limited time window to enter the land and only one chance to do so per day, we had no choice but to step through that impressive warp pipe entrance. We love the immersion of Super Nintendo World and were happy to be proven wrong about a lot of our reservations towards the land when it was first announced. The land is overwhelmingly kinetic, colorful, and packed with things to stand back and look at. However, even on a bright and sunny day, this land could feel way too small for the number of people they cram inside. And this feeling was only heightened when 90% of the crowd was also holding umbrellas over their heads, blocking both the sightlines and the walkways. Inside the imposing Bowser's Castle is the land's main attraction and biggest draw for the park currently, Mario Kart Koopa's Challenge. Locking our umbrellas away in the arguably cool umbrella lockers, we joined the single rider queue for the attraction, and around 45 minutes later, we were on the ride. Do note that the standby queue for this ride is amazing, and if we weren't stressed about getting everything done in one day, we would have definitely used it, as it's incredibly immersive, weaving you through Bowser's Castle and all the setup he is doing for the upcoming kart race. The ride itself is a whole lot of fun, but it can be incredibly overwhelming on your first ride. Aboard, you race through impressively large physical sets, augmented by a screen-based headset where you can see Mario and the gang racing beside you and shoot them with a myriad of classic Mario Kart power-ups. Unfortunately, the insanely long wait times the ride demands means you probably won't get to ride it multiple times to fully get your head around the gameplay concept. After experiencing Mario Kart where I won, which I'm sure has nothing to do with the fact that I had ridden the attraction once before and Dom hadn't, but hey, I'll take the win. After that, we headed back out into the land where we were once again confronted by crowds and rain. We wanted to spend more time in this area, but being here in a downpour is miserable. And to make matters worse, Toad doesn't meet and greet in the rain. Meeting Toad was the best part of this land on my first dry visit a few months earlier, so we just needed to leave. We originally did want to experience some of the power band games, but there was no way we were standing in multiple rainy queues for each of the activities after having to pay $60 for the band itself. So after about an hour in the land, after grabbing a surprisingly yummy yakisoba Yoshi bun, we called time on our visit to Super Nintendo World. Now, to address the elephant in the room, or perhaps the gorilla, Super Nintendo World has since opened another area themed around Donkey Kong, which was unfortunately still under construction when we were at the park. This has opened up Super Nintendo World a little bit more, but has reignited the crazy popularity of this area, with it somehow now getting even busier. Trusted sources say that the Donkey Kong ride itself is spectacular to look at. In reality, it's very rough, but considering this is a first-of-its-kind coaster where it appears to hover above the track and jump over sections, we can cut them slack for being a little rough around the edges. I am super keen to experience a clone of this when I go to Epic Universe in a couple of weeks. Now, despite having talked about Super Nintendo World for the last 10 or so minutes, Universal Studios Japan does have other attractions, with many of these being excellent. But before we get to that, this is a good opportunity to talk about the look and feel of the park. Like many Universal parks, USJ has a few areas that feel a bit plain, but this is far less of an issue here than it is at its sister parks. That's thanks to the strong theming in places like Super Nintendo World and the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, where you genuinely feel like you've stepped into another place. Much of the park is also divided into real-world zones, inspired by places like San Francisco, Hollywood, and New York, though in some of them you could be forgiven for thinking you'd accidentally wandered into Universal Studios Florida. That said, USJ can sometimes feel like it's bursting at the seams. The park is completely landlocked, and in places they've had to get creative to fit everything in. Jurassic Park is the perfect example. Above the lush jungle and palm trees of the land looms the steel track and mesh netting of the flying dinosaur. It's an impressive coaster, but its towering supports cut into the otherwise serene, adventurous vibe, and the gentle soundtrack is constantly punctuated by the screams of riders overhead. It's not a deal breaker. I'd much rather have more rides than less, but it's a clear compromise. Still, there's no denying that USJ can be stunning, especially at night. The central lake provides some truly beautiful views, and the contrast between the more basic areas and the ones where they've gone all out almost makes the latter feel even more special. If I had to sum it up, I'd say the park's atmosphere is beautifully and sometimes frustratingly inconsistent. But back to the rides. As mentioned at the top of the video, you have a good lineup of hard-hitting and varied roller coasters for the thrill seekers to pick from. Space Fantasy the Ride is a fever dream that takes you through space on a fully indoor spinning roller coaster, though more often than not, it's overlaid with some form of anime VR coaster experience. I've never experienced the original one. I've ridden like 3 of the bizarre VR ones. You've also got Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, a now staple attraction at most Universal parks around the world, that takes you on a dark ride journey through Hogwarts. There's also a whole section dedicated to the kids with Universal Wonderland, themed around Sesame Street, Hello Kitty, and Snoopy. There's also a Jurassic Park land themed to Jurassic Park, which of course has Jurassic Park, the ride, which, fun fact, Dom has never ridden. Because every time we've been here, it's been under refurbishment. I've ridden it, it's great. He's never had the chance. Over the other side of the park is Minions.
Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions. Minions.
There would be a few more attractions on this list if you came about 12 months earlier, but a large section of the park has recently closed all of its attractions to accommodate for the newly opened Minions Blast Shooter Ride, and definitely not something related to monsters that fit in your pockets. Not at all. Now, actually getting to ride these previously mentioned attractions was an effort, because a good chunk of the rides at Universal Studios Japan are outdoors, and as we said, it was raining. Constantly. Constant rain. Have we mentioned that yet? At one stage during our day, it was so wet that they closed Jaws the Ride. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the first thing to know about Jaws is that it's a boat ride in water. The rain was so torrential there was too much water to run a water ride. Thankfully, returning later, this ride had reopened. And even though it was still lightly raining, this only added to the immersion and terrifying nature of the attraction. If you didn't know, this ride basically pops you into the film, where you are now the next potential victim of a rampaging, oversized fish. And yes, sharks are fish, but fish don't actually exist. Deal with it. Now, seeing a full-size shark burst out of the water and through the rain towards you, and seeing fire erupt in a rainstorm are things I won't soon forget. Every time I visit, I worry this will be the last chance I ever get to ride Jaws because it's getting on in age and takes up a huge amount of land. If that's unfortunately the case this time, at least it'll make for a unique story, with the rain adding some dramatic flair to the experience. Now, one of Dom's top must-do experiences at the park was Hollywood Dream the Ride Backdrop, a backwards B&M hypercoaster that is the pure definition of a fun ride. The rain, though, had meant that this ride was closed for a large portion of our day. However, as if fate had wished it, right at the end of the day, we walked past the queue, noticed it was open, walked in, only for them to close the gate behind us, making us the very last guests of the day to ride the attraction. With clouds still gloomy overhead for the duration of the line, we begged the sky not to unleash its wetness. Have you ever ridden a roller coaster in the rain? Seems like a fun concept, but let me tell you, it's not. Rain combined with speed becomes little wet projectiles. We learnt this on the tallest, longest, and fastest coaster in all of Australia, DC Rivals Hypercoaster. The first little bit meandering through the tracks and heading up into the lift hill, it's fun. The rest of the experience, though, was spent covering any exposed flesh from being naturally tenderized by the rain. It feels almost identical to paintballing if you've ever been. Thankfully for us, though, the weather held out, and Hollywood Dream did not become our Japanese nightmare. Honestly, while this coaster might look intimidating, it's worth giving a go. There are no inversions or scary elements, meaning the ride is simply packed with fun airtime moments. And best of all, you get to pick your own song to listen to on the ride, with selections ranging from Happy by Pharrell, Bad by Michael Jackson, and even entire cut-down episodes of anime TV shows that were completely undecipherable to me. Look, I thought it'd be something cool, as it was listed as a Universal Japan exclusive track, but it was just people talking to me in a language that I don't speak. One place the park shines, whether it's raining, hailing, or shining, is in its entertainment lineup. Arguably one of the best and most well-rounded of any theme park in the world. Usually we would try and split up the shows across the day to fill in gaps where we needed to take a break, or to take things easy. However, the torrential day meant we essentially crammed every show into one viewing block. The first show we saw was Waterworld, and by golly did it live up to its name. We've always considered this a top-tier stunt show, and we gained even more respect for the hard-working performers who put on the show during a downpour. Unfortunately, the amount of moisture in the air meant that the smoke didn't exactly dissipate as it should have, leaving the last few minutes of the show looking like they were on Smog World. I promise you, our camera wasn't out of focus. This is what the finale actually looked like. Continuing in the show mood and wanting to continue to stay dry, we next headed over to two more shows that were right next door to each other. First was the Universal Monsters Live Rock and Roll Show, an incredibly wordily named show that actually perfectly sums up the plot. If you have ever previously seen Beetlejuice's Graveyard Review at any of the American parks, this is essentially the same, but wonderfully stuck in the 1990s. In the show, Beetlejuice, who still managed to make me die of laughter even though I don't speak a word of Japanese, brings some of Universal's most classic monsters to life to rock out to some of rock and pop's most iconic songs. We're talking Bride of Frankenstein smashing out I Will Survive, Frankenstein wailing away on the guitar to Santana, and the most fantastically flamboyant Dracula rappelling from the roof while singing Livin' La Vida Loca. I don't even like this show just ironically. This show is my Roman Empire, and I will be taking any and all further questions on the matter down in the comments section below. The final in our gauntlet of shows was Sing on Tour. Now, we weren't allowed to film this show, so won't talk about it too much. Just know it features some of the most jaw-dropping technology we've ever seen in a theme park show. Animatronics, live performances, and a concert lighting package that would make Coldplay jealous. You just need to see this show for yourself. However, in this version, we didn't see two families almost get into a punch-on. And if you have no idea what we're talking about, be sure to check out our recent video on Universal Studios Beijing. Depending on when you visit the park, there might also be limited time seasonal entertainment, including things like an impressive looking parade, or as we saw on our visit, a Pokemon Halloween party. Unfortunately, due to the rain earlier in the day, this was a heavily modified version of the regular show, with it just being a handful of Pokemon on stage with an announcer saying, "Pokemon jumping, Halloween party!" over and over again, whilst the characters posed for about 3 minutes and then left the stage. Pure, riveting entertainment. This rain-modified version of a show would rear its ugly head again later in the night, where during Halloween Horror Nights, which is a free inclusion with your regular day ticket at this park, they offered a reduced version of the Resident Evil Night of Heroes show, where I can still barely remember what happened. It went by so quickly. A big guy came out, got shot at, and that was kind of it. Looking at videos, we missed several stunt performers who should have been a part of the show, doing high falls and a larger fight stunt sequence. Safety is obviously the #1 priority, and something is better than nothing, so we weren't upset, just disappointed. One thing that's hard to get past when we're walking around the park is the fact that it was undergoing a massive overhaul, and that's kind of because it was. On our visit, rides like Jurassic Park were closed, and things like VillainCon Minion Blast hadn't opened yet. There were stretches of the park where you could walk for a significant portion of time and see no open attractions. Even if you visit tomorrow, though, a significant portion of the park is still currently closed for the replacement of the Spider-Man attraction, which still hasn't officially been announced. But look, I pretty much told you what it will be earlier in the video. Thankfully, everything that was open, whether all day or intermittently throughout storms, was operated at an incredibly high standard, meaning queues were constantly moving, and rides like Mario Kart Cooper's Challenge were run with the efficiency of a warehouse production line. As we touched on earlier, if you can visit during September or October, you can experience Halloween Horror Nights for free, included with your regular park ticket. This isn't quite as expansive as the upcharge versions at other Universal parks around the world, but it is a great taster for the event. Open pretty much all day was the only scare maze themed around Chucky, which had an incredibly unique finale scene that ended with multiple Japanese women screaming and pushing us out of the way so they could beat us to the exit. Unfortunately, the scare zones that would normally come out later in the night were another rain-affected experience, and the areas ultimately became scare actors huddling under any cover they could find while being completely surrounded by guests on all sides who were taking photos of them. This seems to be a cultural thing where the scare actors don't scare as much as they simply act. But take this cultural difference and shove it under a tiny overhang, and you're in for a disappointing time. I love Halloween Horror Nights, and I feel this wasn't the best first impression of Japan's version of the event, but hey, it just means I have to make it back again in the future to experience it fully. Now, experiences available in the park will heavily depend on when you visit, with each seasonal event offering exclusive experiences you won't find at other times of the year. On previous visits, we've been through Monster Hunter walkthrough experiences, ridden VR roller coasters, and being completely confused by Cool Japan. So make sure to check out whatever is on offer specifically during your visit, as there is guaranteed to be something impressive and unique. One offering that is perfect for families with young'uns is the fully indoor Sesame Street area, containing playgrounds, a small flume ride, and a show featuring the incredibly cute Moppy. However, this wasn't exactly the most fitting place for two grown men to spend their day, so we simply took a few videos and then quickly made our way back outside. The things we do for you viewers. So was the day worth the wet socks? Absolutely. Even with the downpour, we managed to ride pretty much everything we wanted to, saw a ton of shows, and even met Moppy himself. Universal Studios Japan is still an incredible park, a place that blends old-school classics like Jaws with modern marvels like Super Nintendo World. That said, a rainy day here is a very different experience. Outdoor rides can close without warning, seasonal shows might get stripped back to their bare minimums, and every indoor space becomes shoulder to shoulder with other guests. If you ever find yourself in the same situation, know that there are still great ways to fill your day though, from cramming in the shows to ducking into lesser-known indoor gems like that fully covered Sesame Street area. But is this still the best Universal park in the world? I think it is, but the gap between it and the competition is smaller than ever. The park is in a period of big change, replacing some of its most iconic attractions with newer ones that, at times, feel more generic than we'd expect from such an excellent park. In a couple of years, once the dust settles and the expansions are done, we'll have a clearer picture. For now, though, USJ still holds the crown, even if other Universal parks are catching up fast. It'll be interesting to see whether this is still the case after I visit Epic Universe in just a few weeks. I'll let you know. For Review Time, I'm Luke. Thanks for watching, and thank you to Hover Air for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out the description and pinned comment for an exclusive offer. For Review Time, I'm Luke. Thanks for watching. Wait, this just in. We're heading over to my intercity correspondent Dominic for a special message. As of 2023, it was the third most visited theme park in the world's most visited non-Disney theme park, and the world's most visited theme park outside of the United States, only behind the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World and Disneyland in California for attendance numbers. And if you want to help make us become the third most watched theme park YouTube channel in the world, be sure to subscribe. We're well on the home stretch towards our 100,000 subscribers. And if you want to support us further, check out our Patreon or YouTube memberships for exclusive content you won't find anywhere else.